Here's what we learn how to make in this video. The goal of this video is to teach you how to make your first ever song in Ableton Live 11. We're only going to be using the stock plugins and the stock samples that come with Ableton Live 11, and I'm also going to do my best to use the brand new instruments and audio effects that come with Ableton 11. If you want to go a bit more in depth, you can download my Ableton Live 11 starter pack below this video completely free. It includes a guide on how to make electronic music, it includes a sample pack, and it includes Ableton Live 11 templates. Everything you need to get started straight away. So without further ado, let's hop into the door and get it done. So let's create a new live set by going up to File, pressing New Live Set, and then you will see the default set creates 2 MIDI channels and 2 audio channels. To summarize really quickly, MIDI channels are where you can draw in MIDI notes and then they will be played on whichever instruments we choose, and then audio is where we can record in audio or we can play samples. So I'm going to press Tab and switch to the arrangement view, and you can see those tracks are showing up in both views. So the first thing to do is to consider what kind of track you want to make. I'm going to choose a tempo of 115 BPM, but you can just drag down to reduce the tempo or drag up to increase the tempo. The lower the number here, the slower the song. The higher the number here, the faster the song. And it's worth noting you can change the tempo later on if you like, and everything in your song will still work together if the audio is warped correctly. Now let's start by making some chords. If we choose one of our MIDI tracks, let's select an instrument to start using. I'm going to select the Wavetable synth, and if I click this little arrow here, I can see all of the presets that come with it. And presets are different settings saved in an instrument that give each preset a different sound. If we turn on this little headphone symbol here, we can actually preview the sounds before we load them in. To create the chords, I want to select some kind of synth, so we can drag that onto our MIDI channel. And now we can play it with our MIDI keyboard or program the notes in. So let's zoom in by dragging this bar at the top, create a MIDI clip by dragging over, going up to create, then inserting MIDI clip. Now you'll see this piano roll editor has popped up, and this is where we can draw in our notes. If we press B, it toggles in draw mode so we can draw the notes in. And again, if we press the little headphone symbol here, we can hear the notes and preview them. Whereas if you've got it turned off, you can't preview them. So let's turn it on and draw in some chords. How to create chords is a bit in depth for this video, but you can click on the video that's just popped up here in the corner for more information on that. Something new in Ableton 11 is that you can choose the scale that you want to write in. So let's press this button here, choose a scale. I'm going to choose A minor. And then we can press this scale button here, and it only shows the notes within that scale. So I'm just going to draw in a chord progression. It's worth noting this little orange button with the 2 dots on it is the metronome button, and clicking that will play a metronome so you can hear the tempo of the track. And if we press Shift and Tab, we can go back to see our instrument, and if you do want to change the sound, you can press this little hot swap button there, and you can scroll through some other sounds, press return, and it'll just load it in. But I prefer the original. So let's name this Chords. If you click on the track, press Command and R or Control and R in Windows, you can now type in a name. And if we right click, we can color it the color we want. Right click again, and we can assign that color to the clip as well. And of course, you can name your clips in the same way. And this little fella up here is the loop brace. So we can have the song loop and you can extend it or reduce it. And if we press this button here, the song's going to keep looping around. Next, let's create the bass. So if we create a MIDI clip in the same way that we did before, we can now draw in our bass line. I'm just going to drag this down. A quick tip, if you select the bass notes of your chord progression, hold Shift to select them one by one, press copy, and then you can just paste them in. That is going to be our bass line. But we need to select a bass sound, and I'm going to do that in the same way as before. I'll go to my instruments on the left here in the browser, select what kind of instrument I want, or I can go to sounds and select an instrument that way. But that bass line is too high up, so I'm going to double click to get into that piano roll editor. Press Command and A to select everything, or drag to select everything. I'm going to hold Shift and press the down cursor, and I can drop this a whole octave at a time. That's better. I'll tweak the bass line slightly, and I'll change the timing of the chords slightly to give it more interest, just by selecting and dragging those MIDI notes. I'll also add some extra notes to the chords to make them more interesting, but again, if you want to learn about chords, click on the link I shared earlier. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to download my free Ableton Live 11 starter pack below this video and subscribe to my channel for tutorials like this each and every week. Great, so we're going to rename this to be bass. Rename the clip bass. Now let's create a sub-bass line. So I'm just going to select the track, press Command and D for duplicate, or Control and D in Windows. Let's call this sub-bass. And now I'm going to select a different sound for the sub-bass. So let's go to Instruments and then choose Operator. And I'm just going to create a simple sine wave. But it's 1 octave too high, so I'll double click, select the notes, drop them an octave. And now we've got a nice deep bass. Next thing we're going to do is equalize some of the frequencies. So if we press on Chords, go to Audio Effects, and you can see in Ableton 11 we now have folders. So let's select EQ8. And in this drop-down menu here, I'm going to select a high-pass filter, so we can take out the low frequencies of the sound. If we press this S button, we can solo just that sound. So we've cut out these low frequencies beneath 255 Hz, which allows more space for our bass. Now let's cut some of the low frequencies of the bass. And that might sound counterintuitive, but it's going to allow more space for the sub bass. And now the sub bass has got lots of room for itself. Great, so we've got the chord progression and we've got some bass, so let's create some drums. I'm going to delete these 2 audio tracks by holding Shift to select more than one, clicking on them and pressing delete. And now let's color these bass tracks. We can also group them together by selecting them and pressing Command and G. And let's name the group. And this means they can both be processed together. You can mute them both together. You can reduce the volume. Or you can apply effects to them both together as well. So to create drums, I'm going to create a MIDI track by going up to Create, Insert MIDI Track, and you can drag the tracks to reorder them. Now let's load in a drum machine. So in Ableton Live, it's called a drum rack. You can either populate each cell of the drum rack by dragging in your own samples, or you can go to Drums and then select a drum kit. Double click to load it in. And now if we create a MIDI clip, we can program in our drums. If we press Tab, we will see the session view and the mixer again, and we can just drag this down and resize anything we want. But we can see here, we're now clipping on the master channel, which means everything is too loud. So I'm just going to bring down the volume of everything by dragging the faders, or you can click here and type in the amount. And now we've got more headroom on the master channel. We're not going to have any distortion or clipping. So let's go back to arrangement view and finish programming in those drums. And you can select and press Command and D to duplicate, so you don't have to program in every single beat. Now the snare drum. And now we've got the beat in, we can turn off the metronome. Let's put in a hi-hat, and I'm just pressing the scale button as it was hiding some of the drums. Now let's use some basic side chaining to make more room for our sounds and allow our kick to pop through. And to do that, we need to create a separate channel for our kick drum. So we can click on this little icon here to show devices, right click on the bass drum, extract chain, and now it's its separate track here. So you can see we can rename this kick drum. And then click and drag it up to the rest of our drums just for organization. And sidechain compression is where the kick drum will duck the bass and the chords to allow the kick to pop through. So let's solo the bass and the kick. Choose a compressor from Dynamics, put it on the group of the bass, press this little button here, and it's going to open up these sidechain options. Simply choose sidechain, audio input from kick drum, and then by tweaking the threshold, we can make the kick drum duck the bass. If we click on it, press Command and C to copy that compressor, we can also apply it to the chords. Command and V to paste. If you want the ducking to be less, you can just tweak this dry-wet control. Now let's create a melody in the same key. Once we've programmed in a melody, we will add some effects like reverb. So again, just create a new MIDI track, create a MIDI clip, choose an instrument or sound. So I'm going to go up to sounds, I'll go to guitar and plucked, and I'll choose one of these sounds here. Again, if you want to make it easy, you can choose the scale of A minor, press scale, and then just use the notes that now show up. If you want more help on how to write melodies, you can click the link that's showing up now. I'm going to choose a different sound. Let's call it melody. Recolor it, and now we can add effects. So if we want to add delay, we can go to delay and loop, choose delay or echo. I think I'll choose echo. And then we can tweak these settings, choose ping pong, so it pans left and right. And then decide how much we add by using the dry wet control. Let's double click, put it up 1 octave. And then decide if we want to EQ out any of the frequencies. But you can see here, this is a representation of the sound wave and there aren't really any frequencies down here. So we could turn that off and we'd be fine. That is the bypass button which turns devices on and off. Let's have a quick look at some of these other new effects that come with Ableton Live 11. We'll choose our chords. We can double click on this bar of each device to minimize them and hide them. And then let's use the new reverb, the hybrid reverb. I'll turn off the sidechain compression just so it doesn't duck the reverb for the time being. Press solo and let's have a listen. And again, we can press the hot swap button, choose different presets. I really like that. And you can press this EQ tab here, and it allows you to EQ within the reverb. And now let's apply the sidechain compression again. So for the melody, let's try one of the new effects that comes with Ableton Live 11 as well. We've got the chorus ensemble. So let's just drag and drop it in front of the echo. Just to add some more interest, We can also add a phaser flanger, and now they come in the same plugin. And finally, let's add a couple of the new effects to the drums. So we can group the kick drum and the rest of the drums together in the same way we grouped the bass earlier. And now let's apply the Redux, which is a bit crusher, over all of the drums. Redux. And this has had a slight tweak since the previous versions of Ableton. So let's solo that group. Just add some grit. And we can also try out this new spectral resonator. Now we've got our 4-bar loop, let's create a full track out of it. We can zoom out by holding the left mouse button and pulling up on our time bar. Then we can select everything, press Command and duplicate to loop it. And then we can start deleting elements as and when we want them to come in. Turn off loop. And that is how you arrange a track. Now we can add more interest as well in Ableton Live by using automation. So for instance, we might want to take out the low frequencies in the bass just before the drop. So if we put an auto filter on the bass channel, choose high pass, which is going to take out the bass frequencies, we can now automate this frequency knob here just before the drop. So we can right click, show automation in new lane, like so, click there to create a node, click on the drop to create a node, and then click somewhere in between, and then we can drag and take out those bass frequencies over time. And Ableton is going to play that automation live. So let's solo the bass and have a listen to what's happening. And watch this at the same time. And then it brings the low frequencies back in right on the drop. Now we could do that on the chords as well. So let's just copy and paste. And if we want to add more interest in the drums, let's go in and add a cymbal crash right there on the drop. So the next thing I'm going to do is record in some vocals, and this is really cool in Ableton Live 11. So we need to create an audio track, insert audio track, make sure that we've got an input selected. If you press this little button here, you can see your routing options. I've got my microphone selected. If we select an area, press Command and L or Control and L in Windows, it now sets the loop to this area. Make sure that we arm our track. So it's going to record into this track, this audio track, and then press this button up here to record, and it's going to count in 1 bar and start recording. So let's do it, and apologies in advance for my bad singing. Okay, so as I said, really bad, but the great thing about Ableton Live 11 is we can choose the best take. If we press this button to turn off the automation lanes, right click and show take lanes, we can now see all of the different takes. And if we press B to get the draw tool, we can now select the best parts of each take as we see fit. And this is one of the main features of Ableton Live 11. So let's solo my voice and have a listen. So you can see I'm selecting different parts of each take, and it's comping them all together in this one take at the top. And that is how you create your first song in Ableton Live 11. I hope you found it useful, guys. As I said before, don't forget to download your free Ableton Live 11 starter pack. And if you enjoyed this video, please smash like and subscribe to my channel for tutorials like this each and every week. Until next time, cheers and happy producing.